7 bone-chilling truths from Ecclesiastes that will haunt your perspective forever. It was a night like no other, a night that would send shivers down the spine of every soul who dared to uncover the dusty truths hidden within the pages of Ecclesiastes. In a town where whispered legends lingered like shadows, the air crackled with unspoken fears. The truth was coming, and it promised to claw at the very fabric of what they thought they knew. It was as if the walls themselves were leaning in, eager to listen while secrets begged to be unearthed. Underneath the flickering streetlights, a chilling truth bubbled forth from the ancient text of everything: there is a season. But for those who had dared to ask what that truly meant, the answer had always been hauntingly vague. The townsfolk had seen things, witnessed strange occurrences that gripped their hearts with icy fingers. One man claimed he heard the sound of weeping echoing from the old cemetery at midnight. Another swore he saw a figure in the water, beckoning him closer with a ghostly shine. Each tale piled onto the last, feeding the dread that twisted through the alleyways like as the wind howled. A growing unease settled over the town. People clutched their jackets tighter, unease pinching their lips into thin lines. What does it mean, this time of weeping? They thought. Words slipped through their minds like sand through fingers. Was it too much to ask for answers? Questions hung heavy in the air, the awkward silence pressing down, thick and suffocating. Then came the moment that rattled their resolve, the 7th truth, an inconceivable revelation: the dead know nothing. While that may sound relieving to some, it wrapped around the townspeople like a vice. What if it were true? What if the departed were wandering, trapped eternally in a void of forgotten memories? Could the eyes of the lost still watch them, silently judging their every move? This thought, this fear, ignited the whispers into a storm of panic. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The howling wind seemed to carry fragments of words, echoing through the streets. The townsfolk exchanged nervous glances, lips trembling as they sensed an unseen presence. They felt it, the eyes of the departed, watching, waiting. Then came the shrill cry of a startled crow from above, breaking the spell like glass shattering in silence. No more, someone whispered, but it was too late. The darkness had shifted, and in the shadows loomed a question: what if the truths of Ecclesiastes weren't just meant to be read, but to be lived? The air was thick with uncertainty, and the crowd stood frozen, hearts racing, as the first step into the unknown beckoned them closer. The air thickened as if the darkness itself were breathing. People shifted uneasily, digging their fingers into their palms as they tried to shake off the oppressive sensation. A faint pulse of dread coursed through the crowd as if the town were alive, saturated with the ghosts of its history. The hushed breaths of the townspeople mingled with the rustle of dead leaves swirling in the gutter, making the night feel alive and yet profoundly empty. Then, a piercing scream shattered the fragile silence, slicing through the unease like a knife. It came from the old cemetery on the outskirts of town, a place long enshrined in whispered warnings and old wives' tales. The townsfolk froze, the color draining from their faces. How long had it been since anyone dared to tread that hallowed ground at night? Was that? A shaky voice rose above the murmurs, uncertainty thick in their words. Some darted glances toward the cemetery, while others stood paralyzed, caught between fear and morbid curiosity. Suddenly, the call of the crow echoed again, as if urging them to investigate, to confront the unknown that had coiled like a serpent beneath their feet. With trembling hands and shaky breaths, a brave couple of figures stepped forward, drawn by an impulse they couldn't quite name. Tom, stout and often the buffoon of the group, shot a furtive look at Jane, his neighbor. "Come on, we can't just stand here." For a moment, it felt like a spark in the dark, igniting the others to move. Reluctantly, a few more followed, Heartbeats drumming louder than before, each cautious step toward the cemetery felt monumental, echoing with the weight of centuries of buried secrets and untold stories. As they crossed the rusting gate, a gust of wind swept past, swirling with long-forgotten whispers. The weathered headstones loomed like sentinels, watching with silent knowledge. Did they guard the crossroads of the living and the dead? Tom glanced around, sweat beading on his brow. From the depths of the shadows, a figure emerged, a slender silhouette that seemed to pulse with an ethereal glow. It was translucent, shrouded in an ancient air that left the heart racing and breaths shallow. Is it an apparition? Or just imagination playing tricks? As they drew closer, the figure turned, revealing a face caught in a perpetual expression of sorrow. A ghostly hand beckoned, an invitation laced with danger, as if calling them into a time-worn grip. The whimpering cry echoed once more, wrapping around them like chains, eliciting a collective gasp. "What does it want?" Jane murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. The spectral entity stepped forward, and the glimmers in its eyes seemed to spark something deep within them, a recognition that clawed at their sanity. They felt an inexplicable urge to understand, to unlock the secrets buried underneath decades of time and neglect, but before they could respond, the figure faded into the darkness, leaving behind an electric silence thick with uncertainty, a promise unfulfilled. Confusion gripped them. Was it a warning? A plea? And the most terrifying question of all loomed: what if the dead did know something after all? The crowd stared at one another, fear mingling with exhilaration. A shiver ran through them as the wind picked up, carrying away the remnants of the uncaptured moment. There was no turning back now. The truths they had unearthed were only the beginning. What would they reveal next as the dawn blurred the line between worlds? The chilling possibilities echoed through the night like a haunting melody, drawing them deeper into the darkness. A chill coursed through the group as the echo of the spectral figure's presence seeped into their bones. Anxiety wrapped around their minds like a vice. Tom felt the weight of dozens of eyes on him, a brewing storm of uncertainty and fear. The moment seemed to stretch, a taut wire ready to snap. His heart raced. We can't just leave it like this, we have to know what that was. Jane's head shook, eyes wide and imploring. You're talking about the ghost, Tom. What if it's angry? What if it's come to warn us? Her voice trembled, a raw reminder of the risk that loomed over them, yet, the call of their collective curiosity simmered in the air, undeniable and loud. The group took another hesitant step into the cemetery, urged on by a strange defiance. The atmosphere was thick, pregnant with meaning, and something flickered at the edges of their understanding. As they crossed deeper into the graveyard, the wind howled around them, raising goosebumps on their arms and causing the gnarled branches above to creak ominously. The moon had slipped behind clouds, casting shadows that danced in the dim light. Something was wrong. The atmosphere felt electric, charged with the unseen, as if the very earth had shifted beneath them. Without warning, another cry pierced the night, clearer this time, more desperate. It came from a grave not far ahead. The earth seemed to swell and shift, sending jolts of dread straight to their cores. They huddled closer, a morbid curiosity gripping their hearts. What if someone is buried alive? Or something worse? Tom's voice broke the silence, a notion both ridiculous and terrifying. The others exchanged uneasy glances, knowing that exploring any further could unearth demons far worse than they imagined. The cries grew louder, echoing against the gravestones, haunting, anguished. Jane hesitated, swallowing hard. She felt the collective fear mount, threatening to burst. We should call the police. We shouldn't be here, she urged, but her protest fell on deaf ears. The group was drawn to the sound like moths to a flame. Reaching the grave, they paused, gazing down at the weathered headstone. The name carved into the stone was almost indecipherable, worn down by time. It read, Elizabeth Moore, beloved daughter, 1885 to 1905. The cries came again, more urgent now, resonating right beneath their feet. With a swift exchange of glances, Tom and a few others knelt, brushing dirt from the surface. The earth was loose, almost as if something was pushing from below. Adrenaline coursed through them. Ignoring the protests of their racing hearts, they started to dig, clawing away the layers of soil that protected secrets long buried. "Are we really doing this?" someone whispered, but no one answered. They couldn't stop now. Each desperate scoop added to the confusion, and somewhere inside them, an instinct screamed to turn back. But the cries wouldn't let them. As the last shovels of dirt were tossed aside, the outline of a small, weathered coffin emerged, its edges splintered, a relic of forgotten years. Their breaths caught, dread coating the back of their throats. A thought flickered through their minds simultaneously: were they opening a door that should have stayed locked? Tom's trembling hand reached toward the clasp. The group held their breath as time seemed to freeze. The air was alive with expectation, thick with inexplicable fear. He hesitated, inching closer, feeling the pulse of the night against his skin. What awaited them inside could be salvation or certain doom. In that suspended moment, something shifted in the air and the cries stopped abruptly. The silence that followed roared with a finality so eerie, it was as if the universe itself held its breath. And then, they heard it, a whisper against the night, cold and clear: "Let me out this time." Fear gripped each heart with icy fingers. They were no longer explorers, they were trespassers. What had they awakened? Panic rose as they exchanged horrified glances, and as they scrambled backward, the ground beneath them trembled. The secrets buried deep beneath the cemetery were clawing their way back to the surface. What lay in wait could change everything. Would they be brave enough to face the truth? Cold sweat beaded on Tom's brow as the whisper echoed in his mind, repeating like a curse. "Let me out." The words wrapped around him, squeezing tighter with every heartbeat. Anyone else would have fled, but their curiosity held them captive. Fear, like a cold hand, gripped their spines, paralyzing them just enough to make them hesitate. "Someone has to open it," Tom said, his voice quavering, barely louder than the rustling leaves. Was that courage or madness bubbling forth? He couldn't tell. All he knew was that the others were too far gone, entangled in their own fear, caught in the clutches of the unknown. "Tom, please," Jane pleaded, panic rising in her voice. "We don't know what's in there. What if it's not even human? What if it's something dark?" The air felt wrong, painted in shades of dread. Each person seemed frozen in their own private horror, eyes darting from Tom to the coffin. Their breaths were quick and shallow, an animalistic instinct shadowing their reason. "I need a hand here," he muttered, breaking through the silence that hung heavy like a blanket. Someone stepped forward. It was Mike, teeth clenched, eyes filled with resolve. "Together then, okay? On 3? Tom nodded. He could feel the tremors in his fingers as he grasped the handle. 1, 2, 3. With a screech, the lid shifted. Dark air rushed out, swirling around them like smoke. A rancid stench, thick and sickly, struck their senses, inducing nausea. Tom fought the urge to gag as the coffin creaked open slowly, revealing darkness within. The shape was obscured, wrapped in shadows. Is it really Elizabeth?" Someone whispered as uncertainty clawed its way into their hearts. But then the shadows seemed to stir, coiling away, revealing something, a tattered cloth covering a body. Or was it? The candlelight flickered, revealing the features of a girl, her face pale, lips cracked, blue veins faint against her skin. It was wrong, completely wrong. Tom stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the loose dirt. "This isn't right. We shouldn't have done this." Jane stepped closer, a look of horror flooding her face as she reached out, almost as if drawn by an invisible force. "Stop. Don't touch her." But it was too late. The moment Jane lifted the cloth, everything shattered. A scream erupted from the depths of the grave, mingling with the howling wind. It wasn't the girl, it was something more sinister. Terrifying laughter echoed, flowing like venom into the air. It wasn't just a voice, it was a chorus of despair, a cacophony of lost souls. "You can't free her." The ground beneath them trembled harder, and the gravestones shuddered, as if responding to the cries of the girl or whatever she had awakened. "Run!" Tom yelled, adrenaline spiking through him. But feet felt glued to the earth, as shadows began to rise, stretching and curling like smoke, surrounding them. "Where's the way out?" someone shouted, panic flaring like sparks. The world spun as dread swirled around them. They scrambled for the edges, fighting against ghosts of the past clawing their way up. "Elizabeth, no!" Jane cried out, the weight of the moment crashing down. But it was too late. In their quest for curiosity, they had beckoned an ancient evil back into their world. What lay ahead was no longer a mystery, but a nightmare. The cemetery transformed into a battlefield of swirling darkness, and they were caught in its terrifying grip. Their hearts pounded as they faced the truth. They weren't looking for answers, they had just opened Pandora's box. "Why did we dig her up?" Mike choked, stepping into the veil of shadows. Then, just as quickly as it all began, silence descended once more. An overwhelming sense of dread flickered in the air. But that silence was not peace, it was a promise. What waited in that stillness was worse than any screeching screams or hollow laughter. It was the realization that they were not alone. The feeling of eyes watching from the dark grew palpable, a sense that something ancient had taken notice of them, and they had to decide fast. Would they face their fear, or become a part of the legend that had awakened? Tom's heart raced as he faced the immensity of the silence that loomed. It felt alive, a creature wrapping around them, tasting their fear, savoring their hesitation. The shadows writhed as if they had their own lives to cling to. In that moment, the air became charged with something deeply unsettling. "Do you feel that?" Mike whispered, his voice thick with dread. The tremors beneath their feet intensified, it was as if the earth itself tried to expel them from its depths. "We need to get out of here," Tom shouted, adrenaline fueling his limbs. He turned, squinting into the thickening dark, searching for a way out, but every direction blended into a wall of chaos. The sounds of their breaths intermingled with rustling leaves and distant crashing. The world was spiraling. "Tom, over here." Jane's desperate voice cut through the fear. She pointed toward a narrow path, barely visible in the dark. "It leads to the edge of the cemetery. We can make it." The urgency in her tone pulled everyone, even for a split second, into action. They pivoted as one, scrambling toward that glimmer of potential escape, leaving the coffin behind, the faces of the drenched girl haunting them still. As they stumbled forward, shadows darted at the corners of their vision. Whispers curled around them, sounding faint but omnipresent, chanting words in a language that felt primal and twisted. Tom could feel the chill crawl up his spine. The darkness had spoken. "Faster!" Mike urged, his panic igniting a competitive fire. They sprinted down the narrow path, branches snagging at their clothes, giving them the extraordinary metamorphosis of prey being chased by a predator, and then it began. One by one, they felt it, a firm grip closing around their ankles, roots bursting forth from the ground like hands clawing for their next victim. Tom stumbled, nearly losing his balance as he swiped at the air, desperate to free himself. "Keep running," he urged, though his own voice cracked with the weight of dread. Jane was only a few steps ahead. He felt a pulse of determination coursing through him, driving him forward despite the bind of panic clawing at his chest. "Tom!" Jane screamed again, her voice tinged with terror. She turned back, her eyes wide and glassy, and suddenly he understood, something was coming. They were not alone. The shadows coalesced into figures, shifting and morphing into grotesque reflections of what had been buried. They leered as they stretched towards the living, eyes glinting with malice. Fear enveloped him tightly, it invaded his lungs, making it harder to breathe. "Behind you!" yelled Mike, shoving Tom. He turned just in time to see a dark figure lunging for him. Instinct tightened his muscles, and he dove to the side, barely evading its reach. But this was just the beginning. With every turn, every hurried footfall, the shadows followed a relentless tide, feeding off their terror, feeding on the pain of the awakened. Don't look back, don't stop. Jane's voice echoed, a desperate plea that pushed him further into the abyss. They broke past the edge of the cemetery, hearts pounding, breaths heaving in the open air. Relief crashed over them, but it was short-lived. Plumes of fog rolled in, thickening the night. Are we safe? Mike panted, looking back, but the dismal shadows marched forward, relentless. No. We have to get to the car. Tom shouted. The vehicle felt like a lifeline, but was it even safe anymore? They darted toward the parking lot, each step feeling heavier than the last, as if someone was pulling at them, urging them to turn back. The horror crested within him as he glimpsed their surroundings. The world felt wrong, twisted even. Just as they reached the car, a scream shattered the night, echoing through the heavy air. Help me! It was a voice they recognized. Tom faced the direction of the call, heart pounding, dread pooling in his gut like molten lead. What he saw stole every ounce of warmth from his body. Jane was still at the cemetery, her silhouette swallowed by darkness. No, he whispered, horror tightly gripping his throat. They had just begun to escape, but they weren't out of the woods yet. As Tom stood paralyzed, a question loomed in his mind: would they save Jane, or flee before the darkness consumed them all? Tom! Get back! Mike's voice sliced through the heavy fog, but Tom couldn't move. He was trapped in a nightmare where every second felt like an eternity. Jane! He screamed, his heart racing, pounding in his chest like a drum. She was still out there, lost in the clutches of the darkness that had already claimed so much. Another scream echoed, this time more agonizing, and it jolted Tom from his paralysis. The shadows were pressing closer, glimmering eyes watching them hungrily. He grabbed the car door, his trembling hands struggling with the handle. We can't leave her. Tom, you have to think about us. Mike's voice was trembling, coated with desperation. But Tom's resolve hardened. He was not leaving Jane behind. We have to go back. We have to help her, he yelled, turning to his friends. Before they could argue further, Tom dashed across the gravel, each step feeling heavier as if the ground itself pulled against him. He ran recklessly toward the dark maw of the cemetery, the shadows tumbling like fluid smoke around him. Wait! Mike's voice cracked, but Tom couldn't hear him over the pounding of his heart. Jane's cries seemed to echo from all around him, an awful melody woven with terror. He dove back into the darkness of the cemetery, where the tombstones loomed like sentinels. The air felt thicker, charged with an energy that made his skin prickle. In the distance, he spotted her, Jane, standing at the open grave, the chill of the night wrapping around her like cold fingers. Her head hung low, drenched hair obscuring her face. Jane! He called, the sound tangling in his throat, fraying as it escaped his lips. But instead of turning, she stood frozen, as if compelled by an unseen force. Tom, please! A faint whisper slipped from her lips, carried by the wind. He rushed to her side, adrenaline propelling him through the disorienting shadows. Don't be scared. I'm here. He reached out and grasped her arm, feeling the icy grip of fear pulse through her. Her gaze snapped up, eyes wide, haunted. You have to leave. It's not safe here. Before he could respond, a rumbling came from the earth, unsettling, like an awakening. The ground trembled beneath them, and the black figures emerged from the graves, twisted remnants of their former selves. Faces contorted in anguish, reaching toward them with skeletal fingers, their mouths moving but no sound coming out. Run! He shouted, yanking Jane toward the path they had come from, but she resisted, fear anchoring her to the spot. I can't leave them. She cried, her eyes pleading. Suddenly, a flash of understanding struck him, a realization that shattered his panic. They're not real. They're trapped, just like we are. They hadn't returned to life, they were bound by something dark, an echo of sorrow carried on the wind. Let them go. Jane's voice broke into a sob, tears streaming down her face. Tom's heart twisted as he watched her grapple with the shadows of those lost. He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look him in the eyes. We can't save them. We have to save ourselves. At that moment, darkness swirled around them, pressing in, suffocating. The shadows hissed, frustration boiling over, and with a flash of instinct, Tom pushed Jane away from the grave, breaking the spell. Now, run! He bellowed, turning to face the angry tide of shadows closing in on them. They sprinted together, lungs burning, hearts pounding furiously. Every step felt heavy, the shadows clawing at their backs, desperate for them to turn around, desperate for their despair. With sheer willpower, they burst through the cemetery gate, slipping into the parking lot. Tom turned, glancing back in the fleeting light to see the figures shrinking, their wails echoing in the air like a melancholic farewell. We made it. He gasped, relief flooding him, but Jane was shaken. What if they follow us? She shook, forcing the words out in trembling breaths. Tom stared into the darkening horizon, a heavy dread settling in his gut. They're tied to the cemetery, to the darkness, but what if they're not the only ones? As he looked around, he sensed another presence. Something was waiting in the shadows. Get in the car! He shouted, adrenaline pushing them forward, but dread lyrics echoed through his mind. What if their true horror awaited them beyond the graveyard? The night was far from over and the real fight was just beginning. What had they truly awakened? The engine roared to life, a desperate attempt at normalcy in a world turned upside down. Tom gripped the wheel, knuckles white with tension. The fog was swirling thick again, obscuring the road ahead, as if the night itself were trying to swallow them whole. Are we safe? Jane's voice trembled, a haunting fragility woven into her words. She shifted in her seat, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting the shadows to come creeping in after them. Tom forced a reassuring smile despite the dread gnawing at his insides. We're fine. Just keep your head down. He punched the gas, the tires screeching against the pavement as they raced away from the cemetery. Each second felt like a countdown, what would happen once they left that cursed place behind, but in that eerie silence, as they sped along the empty roads, a chill washed over him. Something was still not right. Jane's voice was barely above a whisper. What if they do follow us? What if we brought something with us? He clenched his jaw, trying to swallow the fact that those lingering specters might not be confined to that graveyard. Maybe we just need to get somewhere safe. Like a diner or the police station. Mike chimed in, disbelief spreading across his face. Because that's gonna help. They probably think we're just a bunch of teenagers messing around. You don't know that. Tom shot back, the tension thickening in the air. The headlights flickered over an empty stretch of road, casting eerie shadows over the trees lining their path. Something felt wrong, an electric anticipation lurked in the air. At that moment, Tom's phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He reached for it, heart racing as he pulled it out. One new message. Unknown sender. His finger hesitated above the screen. Should I open it? Tom, don't. Just concentrate on driving. Jane's voice was urgent, laced with panic. Ignoring her warnings, he pressed the screen, revealing a single line that made his gut drop. You've awakened us. You can't escape. What? Mike leaned over to peer at the phone, his face paling. We need to get out of here, now. The car instantly felt too small, the air too dense. Tom slammed his foot down on the gas, propelling them forward, but the road stretched endlessly in front of him. The message sunk deep into his mind, twisting his thoughts and tainting his heart with fear. Tom, look out! Jane screamed that he whipped his gaze up just as a shadow darted across the road. A figure cast in darkness jumped out from the woods, arms flailing. With a jolt, Tom swerved, narrowly avoiding a collision, the tires screeching in protest. The world outside spun into a blur of swirling lights and shadows. What was that? Mike yelled, his voice a mix of astonishment and terror. I don't know. Tom shouted back, glancing in the rearview mirror. The figure had vanished into the trees just as fast as it had appeared, but the heavy weight of dread clung to him, forming a palpable mist that filled the car. "Just drive," Jane ordered, her eyes wide with fear. But even as they sped away, the shadows thickened around them, a dark tapestry woven by unseen hands. Suddenly, his phone vibrated again, this time a new notification chiming relentlessly. The message flashed across the screen: "You will return or you will pay." "Tom." Mike's voice cracked with panic. "What are we going to do? We can't go back there." Tom swallowed hard, his heart racing. The temperature in the car dropped several degrees as a chill ran down his spine. The shadows felt closer, wrapping around them like a tightening noose. "Get ready to run," he barked as the horizon loomed ahead, uncertain and dark. Time was slipping away, but what awaited them just might be more sinister than they could ever imagine. What if they weren't alone anymore? What if they were just the beginning? The night had dark secrets yet to reveal, and they were going to find out what those were one way or another. The night thickened around them, a swirling mass of darkness that seemed poised to swallow them whole. Tom gripped the steering wheel harder, every bump in the road sending jolts of anxiety through his body. He could feel Jane's eyes on him, heavy with an unspoken question: "What is happening?" "Turn on the radio," she shouted suddenly, as if the music could drown out their panic. Tom fumbled with the knob, but the car's speakers crackled to life with static. He cursed, slamming the dial back into silence. Then, another vibration erupted from his phone, vibrating like a heartbeat against his leg. He risked a glance at the screen, the message again staring back at him: "You cannot hide from us. Tom, we can't stay here limping along the road. They'll find us." Mike's voice wavered, the terror unmistakable. "Maybe we should stick to the main roads," Jane said breathlessly, pointing out into the darkness. "Try to get to town." And a low, eerie howl echoed from the woods, slicing through the tension in the cramped car. It sent shivers racing down their spines. Tom glanced into the forest, but saw nothing more than a swirling veil of fog. "Did you hear that?" Mike stammered. "Drive faster," Jane urged, her voice trembling, now tinged with raw fear. She turned to face the rear window as if expecting shadows to materialize there, lurking just out of sight. Tom soiled his spirit determinedly. "We'll make it through this. I promise." But with each heartbeat, doubt crept in, pricking at the edges of his resolve. As they barreled down the desolate road, Jane's sudden gasp forced Tom to look ahead. Just up ahead, the road gave way to a clearing. It was the last place perfectly illuminated by a flickering neon sign. "Diner." Desperate for refuge, he swerved sharply into the parking lot. But the all-too-familiar feeling of dread clung to them, heavy and suffocating. The place looked abandoned, with peeling paint and boarded windows. The air felt electric, charged with something sinister. "Are you kidding me? A place like this? They're already here," Mike shouted, panic clawing at his voice. "Shut up," Tom spat back. He killed the engine, his pulse pounding in his ears. "If they want us to go back, let us not make it easy for them. We need somewhere safe to think." They stepped out of the car, the cold air biting at their skin. Jane wrapped her arms around herself, straining to peer into the dimly lit diner. "Is that even open?" she murmured, fear dancing in her eyes. "Looks like it." Tom squinted into the thick glass, a flicker of movement catching his gaze inside. "I think someone's in there." With cautious steps, they approached the door. It creaked open, revealing disheveled booths and a counter covered in grime. The faint smell of old coffee lingered, mingling with something else, something rotten. As they stepped inside, the bell chimed a ghostly welcome. "Hello," Tom called out, his voice echoing into the depths of the diner. Silence responded, thick and suffocating. Then, the door slammed shut behind them, and the sudden sound ricocheted off the walls. They all jumped, hearts racing. Now we're trapped. Mike hissed. What was that? Jane whispered, eyes glued to the shadow dancing at the back of the diner. Slowly, a figure stepped out from the shadows, tilting their head in a way that sent another wave of chills skittering up Tom's spine. A twisted smile spread across their face, revealing teeth too sharp to be human. Welcome, the figure whispered, voice dripping with malice. I've been waiting for you. Tom's heart sank, whatever comfort this diner had promised was slipping away like sand through his fingers. Run! He shouted, but his voice only echoed in the thickening darkness. The realization hit hard. What awaited them hadn't just followed them from the graveyard. It was here, waiting in the depths of the diner, and it intended to finish what had been started. As the figure lurched toward them, they all spun, desperation clawing at their lungs. Where were they supposed to go now? The door loomed at the far end like a distant beacon, but the laughter of shadows ignited behind them. In that moment, Tom knew one undeniable truth: they were never meant to escape. And with that revelation, the night sealed around them. Tom's feet pounded against the stained linoleum flooring as he yanked Jane and Mike with him. The figure twisted and writhed like a predator playing with its prey, eyes fixed on them, gleaming with a sinister hunger. Over there! Jane shouted, pointing to a narrow corridor at the side of the diner. Without hesitation, they dashed towards it, hearts thumping in their chests like war drums. Each breath was a desperate gasp, the fridge hum and distant drip of water echoing in their ears like impending doom. The hallway smelled of mildew and despair. Tom risked a glance back, but the figure was gaining. It lunged with an unnatural speed, grinning wider as panic surged through him. Keep going! Tom shouted, his voice a raw rasp as he nearly slipped on a greasy patch. They burst through a door at the end of the hall, finding themselves in a dimly lit kitchen, cluttered with rusted pots and half-empty bottles of long-expired sauces. What now? Mike panted, eyes darting, searching for an escape. Tom spotted a rusty exit door, its paint peeling and hinges creaking ominously. That way! He seized the door handle, panic gnawing at his mind. Tom, wait! Jane hissed, grabbing his arm. What if they're out there too? He hesitated just a heartbeat. We can't stay here. Another jolt of noise echoed from the diner. The sound was distorted, like a low growl mixed with unsettling laughter. Go! Tom said, wrenching the door open. The cold night air washed over them like a wave, but the moment was shattered when a clatter of metal behind them signaled their pursuer was close behind. They rushed out into the night, wet grass squelching underfoot as they scrambled away from the diner, but the haunting glow of the flickering sign was still behind them, a spectral spotlight foreshadowing doom. We need a car! Mike yelled. Somewhere to hide. Over there. Jane pointed down the lot, towards a cluster of rusting vehicles. Their headlights cast haunting shadows that twisted across the ground. Tom felt a surge of hope. If we can just get inside one. But just as they bolted toward the cars, the air crackled. Just a split second later, the figure bolted through the door of the diner, almost blurring in its speed. Fear gripped him like iron shackles. The laughter followed them, echoing, filling the night with a chilling sound. He pushed harder, heart drumming, adrenaline fueling every desperate stride. Jane pulled at the handle of an old sedan. It's locked. Damn it! He raked his fingers through his hair, eyes flitting back to the shadow hurtling toward them. They didn't have time. Try this one. Mike shouted, yanking at an ancient pickup truck's door. It groaned open. Tom jumped in, arms squeezing both Jane and Mike through the door just as the figure lunged forward, narrowly missing. Slamming the door shut, Tom fumbled with the keys dangling uselessly in the ignition. Come on, come on. The engine sputtered, refusing to start. Exhalation heaved from his chest as he turned to see the figure's face plastered against the window. Its smile was wide, the sharp teeth gleaming grotesquely. Drive now! Jane screamed, nails digging into Tom's arm. Get back! He yanked her down just as the glass shattered, splintering into glittering shards. The figure's hand reached for them, clawed fingers scraping mere inches from their faces. Tom twisted the key again, his vision narrowing as panic coiled tight. Then, the engine roared to life, a miracle against the impending carnage. He slammed the gear into drive, wheels screeching as they tore away from the diner, but not far behind, the figure was undeterred, the laughter echoing in the wind, haunting them as they sped down the dark road. "Where do we even go now?" Mike gasped, the reality sinking in. They de-escaped for the moment, but the shadows were relentless, stretching in the rearview mirror, mocking their flight. "Anywhere but here," Tom muttered, knuckles white on the wheel, seconds ticking away like a countdown to something far worse. As they plunged deeper into the night, the glow of the diner faded behind them, but the chilling urge to know who or what had hunted them remained. And just as they rounded a bend, a chilling message blared on the radio, crackling through the static. "It's not over. We'll find you." The weight of despair wrapped around them once more. "Not again." Jane breathed, glancing back, terror skimming across her features. "Hold on." Tom's voice shook, realization settling like a stone. Their nightmare had only just begun. What new terrors awaited them on the road ahead? The night loomed ominous as Tom's pulse quickened, each beat echoing his dread. They had escaped the diner, but dread murmured that the darkness was still watching. What now? Mike panted, his breath shallow. Tom clutched the wheel, a weighty responsibility pressing on his chest. "We need to find help," he said, his voice filled with determination and fear. "Somewhere safe." As he turned down a barely lit road, shadows danced menacingly around them. The headlights flickered on an old sign: "Beware, haunted woods ahead." "Great," Jane snapped, her voice tense. "Just what we need." Tom's gut twisted at the thought. He slammed the gas, desperation pushing them deeper into uncertainty. They couldn't let panic rule them, but fear was clawing at the edges of their reason. In the back seat, Jane's voice was strained. "How do you even know we're not bringing more trouble along with us?" Fresh memories of the sinister figure from the diner bubbled to the surface. What if this was just a prelude to something far worse? The anxiety rose like bile in his throat. "I don't know. I don't know anything anymore." Tom snapped back, his frustration boiling over. He needed to control the chaos surrounding them. Suddenly, the car jolted, the tires losing traction on the gravel. "What was that?" Mike exclaimed, panic rippling through his tone. As Tom wrestled with the steering wheel, the car skidded, coming to an abrupt halt with a sickening thud. "Just great. We're stuck." Tom kicked the dashboard, heart pounding like a war drum. A chill filled the car as the whispering began, a low, wretched symphony of sorrow that breadcrumbed through the silence. "Do you hear that?" Jane's eyes were wide, terror eclipsing her features as sounds of anguished wails whirled around them. "Tom, we need to get out." But as Tom's pulse raced, he couldn't bring himself to move. Was it déjà vu? The shadows were now creeping closer, a reflection of their own darkest fears taking shape. Each car door felt like a portal, one that could lead to madness. "Tom!" Mike's voice broke through the clamor. "Look!" He pointed toward the woods that loomed just beyond the car, their outlines blurred and shrouded in obscurity. Something moved among the trees, gliding like a smoke ribbon, and then it struck him hard, a dawning realization: they had to face what they had awakened. "We're not running anymore." The words fell from his lips like leaden weights, determination simmering beneath the fear. "If we want to stop this, we need to confront it. Together." "But how?" Jane whispered, dread clearing the air momentarily. "Those echoes," he said, determination lining his voice. "The wails we heard, they're calling to us. They need our help." He felt boldness rising within. "If we can prove we're not enemies, maybe they'll release us." "What if they're angry?" Mike challenged, fear dancing in his eyes. "Better than being hunted." Tom met both their eyes, locking in shared resolve. "Whoever or whatever is out there, we have to find a way to put things right. The woods whispered back, and Tom knew instinctively that if they moved carefully, they could turn the tide. He pushed the door open, adrenaline fueling his courage. Come on. It's time to go. The chill of the night wrapped around them as they stepped into the dark embrace of the woods. The very air hummed, anticipation electrified the atmosphere. As they ventured deeper, an eerie light flickered in the distance, illuminating the silhouettes of shadowy figures more clearly. Who are they? Jane's voice trembled. Spirits trapped, Tom murmured, barely above a whisper. The figures came into focus, sorrowful faces twisted in longing, eyes filled with desperate cries for release. What do we do? Mike's voice quivered. Tom's heart drummed loud with purpose. We need to free their spirits. We have to listen, he said softly. They want to tell us something. Tell us what? Jane asked, uncertainty crackling like static. Why they're here, why we awakened them. Tom stepped forward, the other two following, but the tension remained heavy as the spectral forms swayed with anticipation. Show us, he said, lifting a trembling hand, urging them to communicate. The creatures whispered, a blend of voices encircling him like a swell of waves, crashing and pulling away in a haunting rhythm. Each word painted a vivid picture, their pain and sorrow intertwining with his heart. Let us go, one ghostly figure cried, a deep ache in its voice. Unveil the truth. Free us from our chains. Chained? Tom's voice cracked, the heaviness hitting him straight in the gut as he began to understand. You're bound to regrets lost in this darkness. Yes. They cried out in unison, anguish palpable. Then how? Jane urged. What do we have to do? Release our burdens, another spirit pleaded, shadowed hands reaching. Face the fears you've awakened. You can sever our ties. Help us find closure. Tom felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. We can do this together, he said, his voice steady. Let go of your hate, your desires. You don't have to linger any longer. Shadows danced, warm-hearted laughter and tears intermingled, and he felt their energy building, unreal but sincere. The spirits flared, wisps of glowing light rising from their bodies. Tom turned to Jane and Mike. We have to say goodbye to free them. Drawing in a deep breath, they formed a circle, hands clasped tightly together, forming a bond strong enough to illuminate the dimness. We're here, Tom spoke firmly, surrendering his fear. Let go. You're free now. A chorus of wails rose and flooded the air, a chaotic symphony transforming into celestial notes of release. The spirits erupted in a blaze of light, the darkness bending and retreating. The world around them illuminated brilliantly, colors swirling, filling the void with warmth. Tom's chest felt lighter, clarity blooming like flowers in spring. And then, just like that, silence fell. The weight of dread lifted, replaced by a soft breeze carrying whispers of gratitude. Did we do it? Mike asked, glancing around. I think we did, Jane breathed, astonishment spilling over her face. Tom turned, knowing they had faced their fears and unveiled hidden truths, learning the power of connection. It's over. And as they stepped back into the world, the fog began to clear. They were free of the shackles that had bound them both living and departed. A new understanding stirred within them, a sense of closure that would transcend the darkness. With lighter hearts, they found their way back to the car, their laughter shimmering in the wake of lingering shadows. The night's terrors faded into memories, yet the growing bond between them became a promise of hope. As they drove away from the woods, Tom glanced in the rearview mirror, reveling in the light that now filled the space around them. None of them would be haunted by the past anymore, and as dawn broke, illuminating the horizon with warmth, they understood in every ending lies a new beginning, and they were ready to embrace it together. Now, listen closely. If you enjoyed this thrilling journey, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now. Let's keep feeding the algorithm and spark more adventures. Flood the comments section with your reactions, predictions, and theories about what could happen next. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic conclusion. Real fans know the importance of supporting the channel through these actions, so let us keep this amazing community growing.